All right, parallel and perpendicular lines. To find out if two lines are parallel or perpendicular, you have to compare their slopes. This all has everything to do with slope. So to compare their slopes, we're going to need all the equations to be in y equals mx plus b form. How come? Because once it's in y equals form, you know the number in front of the x is the slope of that line. So your first step that you're going to take is when you're given two equations, you make sure that they are rearranged and put in this form. Then you look at their slopes. For parallel lines, their slopes are exactly the same. Same sign, same number. For example, y equals 2x plus 3 and y equals 2x minus 7. Both have a slope of 2. These two lines are parallel. Now, there's one thing I want to add to this. You have another situation that is called coinciding. These are basically the same line. They're not just parallel to each other, they're the same line. So not only would they have the same slope, but they would also have the same y-intercept. So you have to be very careful when you're answering some of the questions. If the question is asking you, tell me if these lines are parallel, perpendicular, or coinciding, or neither, you're going to look at their slopes, and if the slopes are the same, pause for a second and double check the y-intercept. And if the y-intercept is different, then they are parallel. If the y-intercept is the same, they're coinciding. Now, your other option would be, your lines could be perpendicular. Perpendicular lines are a little bit trickier to figure out. Their slopes, again, we're just going to look at the slope, are negative reciprocals. So let's talk real quick about negative reciprocals. If I have a slope of positive 2/3, the negative reciprocal would be a number that is the opposite sign. It's not always a negative number. It's the opposite sign and the reciprocal, which is to flip it. So it would be a negative 3/2. If I had a slope in one line of a negative 6, a slope that is a negative reciprocal of that would be a positive 1/6. Because you have to think of it as 6/1. Then you can flip it. Likewise, here comes the tricky one. 0. If you recall, a line that has a slope of 0 is a horizontal line. So if you think about it, its perpendicular line would be vertical. But let's look at the slopes. A slope of 0, again, you could think of it as 0/1. And when I do the negative reciprocal, I get a negative 1/0. And I'm hoping that you will get kind of trained, so to speak, to look at that and say, not allowed to have 0 in the denominator, no slope. Or undefined, same thing. Okay, so what do we do with this? Well, let's try a couple problems. First, I can get the board down. Here's an example. When I erased something, I forgot to put the y back there. So let's put the y back there. All right. The question is asking, well, I didn't write it up there, but I'll tell you what it is. The question wants to know, are these two equations parallel, perpendicular, coinciding, or neither? So let's figure this out. Well, I'll use the purple. First step that I told you is they have to be written as y equals. So I'm going to need to do a little moving around before I can answer this. First equation, to solve for y, I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides and get negative y equals negative 3x minus 7. A lot of negative signs here. Notice that slope-intercept form is not negative y equals. It's positive 1y equals. So I have to get rid of this negative sign. I'm going to divide everything by -1. And I get y equals 3x plus 7. All right, now let's do the other one. Subtracting y from both sides. Oh, see, I'm making a lot of mistakes today. Subtracting x from both sides gives me 3y equals -x plus 6. Now, to solve for y, I want y equals, I have to divide everything by 3. And what do I have? Y equals negative, that can be written as a 1/3 plus 2. Now, I have not answered the question yet. What I need to do is, I've just rearranged and set them both in slope-intercept form. So I need to look at their slopes and answer the question. The first line has a slope of 3. The second equation has a slope of a -1/3. Those are negative reciprocals. And so my answer is perpendicular. Now, you can't just write perpendicular, you have to show me why. And so this shows me why right here. All right? Now let's try the other one. Again, I have to rewrite the equations in y equals mx plus b format. So I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides, divide everything by 2, and I have this equation done. And I can see the slope is -2. On this equation, I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. And I'm done. I don't have to do anything else. The first equation has a slope of -2. The second one has a slope of -2. I have a pair of parallel lines. Now, although they have the same slope, I did have to glance and double check and make sure these were not the same. If these were the same, my answer would have been coinciding. But since they're not, they're parallel. All right, there's one other type of question that you're going to be asked, and that is, write the equation of the line in standard form through the point 5, -3, and it's perpendicular to this equation, or this line. A lot of words, I know, but you have to kind of pick through it and see what it is they're asking and what it is that they're telling you. They're asking me to write the equation of a line. I see right off the bat they're telling me a point. Before I read anything else, I know I must use y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So let's get it started. I'm going to plug -3 in for y1. Y minus a -3 is y plus 3. Over here I have x minus 5. When you're given a point, you can go ahead and plug it right in. The only thing I still need is my slope. So what else do they tell me? It says my line is perpendicular to this equation. Notice I am completely skipping the part that says write it in standard form. Because if you remember, that's not how you start the problem, it's how you end it. So I want perpendicular to this equation. That means I need to take that slope, and I don't want a 1/2 in my equation because they're not parallel. They're perpendicular, which means I want the negative reciprocal of 1/2. And the negative reciprocal of 1/2 is a -2. So I'm going to put in a -2 right there. Now, I would be done if it wasn't for this part right here, standard form. Now, that's just telling me, take my answer, have to rearrange some things and put it in the right format. So I'm going to go ahead and keep going. I'm going to distribute the -2, and and that's a plus 10, be very careful, negative 2 times negative 5. And I need standard form, and standard form says I want the x and the y together on one side and the constants on the other. So first this 3 needs to come over here, and also this negative 2x needs to come back over here with the y. So let's move the x. Now let's move the 3 first. All right, if I subtract 3 from both sides, I get y equals negative 2x plus 7. That would have been slope-intercept form, but it asks for standard. So I have one more step to do. I have to move the negative 2x over, and I get positive 2x plus y equals 7. And there you go, using parallel and perpendicular lines and comparing their slopes and using that information to write the equation of a line. Good luck.